All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a question that's about as fundamental as it gets. What makes you, well, you? Now, for years, we've all been told it's pretty much a mix of your genes and how you were raised. But what if a huge piece of the puzzle, a massive part of your personality, actually comes down to nothing more than pure random chance? Today, we're unpacking a really cool new model that helps explain how that actually works.
It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But for decades, the scientific answer has really revolved around two major forces.
You know the drill. It's nature versus nurture. On one side, you've got your genes, right? The biological blueprint you get from your parents. And on the other, you have your environment, your family, your friends, all the experiences that shape you. And for the longest time, we all kind of thought, okay, that's the whole story. Turns out, it's not even close.
And here's where the story takes a fascinating twist. See, a researcher named Robert Plowman, who spent his entire career studying twins, found something that just didn't add up. I mean, he accounted for their identical genes, he accounted for their shared family life, and there was still this huge, unexplained, powerful, random element left over. Something that makes two people with the exact same starting blocks still turn out so different.
So that's the big personality puzzle we're going to try and solve today. Where on earth does that randomness come from, and how does it have such a huge impact on who we all become?
And let's be really clear about this. This isn't just some tiny little statistical error. It's a massive, significant piece of what makes us who we are. It's the unique experiences, the little bits of developmental noise, the things that just happen. So how do you even begin to build a model of personality that actually accounts for that?
Well, to solve it, we need a whole new kind of blueprint. So let's dive into something called the CREAT model. It's a framework that sees personality not as this fixed thing you're born with, but as something that emerges from a really complex system. A system that operates on three totally distinct but deeply interconnected levels. Okay, the easiest way to think about this is like you're building with Legos. At the very bottom, you have all the individual bricks, right? That's the micro level. Then you have the stable sections you build from those bricks, walls, towers, that sort of thing. That's your meso level. And finally, you have the finished spaceship or castle at the top, the big picture. That's the macro level. Let's break each one down.
So everything, and I mean everything, starts at the micro level. This is the constant, chaotic stream of raw data in your life. We're talking about the random compliment a coworker gave you, the traffic jam that made you late, your own unique genetic quirks, even just the random firing of neurons in your brain. Think of these as the thousands of tiny, unpredictable inputs to your personal system, the individual Lego bricks.
Next up, you've got the meso level, and this is the crucial bridge. It's kind of like a set of middle managers that takes all that chaos from the micro level and starts organizing it into stable, recognizable patterns. These are things like your established habits, your brain's well-worn neural pathways, or your body's default hormonal levels. They basically create order out of all that noise, like assembling all those loose Lego bricks into sturdy walls and towers.
And then finally, all of that hard work builds up to the macro level. This is your personality as you and everybody else actually experiences it. It's the big picture label, you're an introvert, you're conscientious. It's your core identity, how you see yourself. This is the you that emerges from all those layers below, the finished Lego castle.
So, if our personality is built up from these different levels, how does a specific trait go from being just a random possibility to becoming a stable, locked-in part of who we are? Well, the model gives us a really fascinating mechanism for exactly this.
Think about the vast majority of those tiny little micro events that happen to you every single day. You know what? They're just noise. They happen and then, poof, they're gone. They don't leave any lasting trace on your personality. They just wash right out of the system.
But, and this is the absolute key to the whole thing, some of them don't fade away. A few very specific micro-events get amplified. They resonate with those meso-level habits and networks, and that signal starts traveling upwards through the system, gaining strength as it goes. This is where those random events that Plowman talked about find their real power.
This process has a name. It's called constraint resonance. So imagine a small micro-event. You try a new, really challenging puzzle and you solve it. That little victory resonates with a meso-level habit of enjoying problem-solving. This then reinforces a macro-level identity of being a smart person. Now here's the magic. Because you see yourself that way, you start actively seeking out more puzzles. And that's it. That's the powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. And what's so brilliant is that scientists can actually model this. There's a tipping point. When the gain of that feedback loop, basically its power to reinforce itself, reaches a value of 1 or greater, the trait locks in. It becomes a stable, self-maintaining feature of your personality. It doesn't even need the original trigger to keep it going anymore.
So what does it actually mean for you when a trait becomes part of this stable, self-maintaining system? Well, it fundamentally changes how you interact with the entire world. Check this out. Before a trait locks in, the flow of information is from the bottom up. Random daily events are literally shaping who you're becoming. But after it locks in, the entire flow reverses. It becomes top-down. Your now stable personality actively starts shaping the daily events and experiences you have. And this leads to two really critical concepts. First, you get something called downward causation. This just means if you have a locked-in trait for, say, conscientiousness, you're going to actively seek out organized and tidy environments, a process called niche picking. Your personality is now calling the shots. Second, you get hysteresis. It's a fancy word for inertia. It means that once a trait is locked in, it's really hard to change. It just keeps going. Even if the original reasons for it are long gone. Think of someone who developed super frugal habits during a tough time. They might stay that way for life, even after becoming wealthy. The trait is now just running on its own steam.
Okay, this is all starting to sound very permanent, isn't it? If our personality becomes this stable, self-sustaining system, does that mean we're just stuck? Is change impossible? Not at all. But what the model shows us is that we have to be smart about it. We have to pull the right levers. And here it is. This is probably the single most powerful, actionable takeaway from this whole model. If you want to create real, lasting change, you don't fight against every single tiny habit or impulse. That's a losing battle. No, you attack the high-level constraint, the macro-level trait, or the core identity itself. Just look at the difference here. Trying to force one new micro-habit, like waking up 10 minutes earlier, the model predicts that's incredibly inefficient. Why? Because the whole system just pushes back to maintain its stability. But what if you change the whole system from the top down? Things like reframing your identity, taking on a completely new life role, like becoming a parent, or totally redesigning your context by, say, moving to a new country. Those are the kinds of changes that are predicted to have a massive, lasting impact.
What this all tells us ultimately is that trying to change your personality through sheer willpower is like trying to change a river's course with a bucket. It's absolutely exhausting and it almost never works. Lasting change isn't about fighting the current. It's about reshaping the entire landscape so the river naturally starts to flow in a new direction.
So this whole model leaves us with a really provocative and honestly a pretty empowering question. If your personality isn't something that you are, but something that emerges from a system, then maybe the ultimate power isn't in forcing change, but in skillfully designing the conditions, the context, the roles, the identity that allow a new version of you to emerge, to resonate, and to lock in, all on its own.